All right, listener. Are you ready for a trip into the grim darkness of Warhammer 40K? We're diving deep into the Imperium of Man today. We've got a pile of YouTube transcripts overflowing with lore and in-universe descriptions to guide us, plus this really curious blank new note that I'm already dying to know more about.
A blank note. That's an interesting wrinkle. It almost feels like a missing piece of the puzzle waiting for us to figure out where it fits.
Right. It's like the universe is saying, hey, you think you know the Imperium? There's always more to discover. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's paint a picture of this galaxy we're dealing with.
Well, imagine a Milky Way galaxy 90,000 light years across, studded with 4 billion stars. Sounds expansive, I mean. But here's the catch. Only a tiny fraction of those have habitable planets, and even fewer have actually been explored by humanity.
So we're not talking about some sleek, hyper-connected galactic federation like in Star Trek.
No.
This is more like uncharted territory full of danger and isolation.
Exactly. And that isolation is crucial to understanding the Imperium. Humanity's first forays into space began 20,000 years ago, but progress wasn't a smooth upward trajectory. Millennia of setbacks, lost knowledge, rediscovery. It's a testament to human resilience that we're even here at all.
It makes you wonder what incredible technology they might have had back then and what might have been lost along the way. But hold on, you mentioned that human worlds are clustered mostly in the west of the galaxy. What about the east?
The Eastern Fringe, a region shrouded in mystery, sparsely populated and full of whispers of forgotten empires and ancient dangers. Even the Imperium, with all its might, treads carefully in that region.
Okay, I'm getting chills already. So we've got this vast, fragmented empire spread across a galaxy that's more like a dangerous, uncharted ocean than a well-mapped highway. But what about the Imperium itself? What defines it? Is it all about conquering and controlling territory?
It's not just about landmass, it's about sheer scale. Over 1 million star systems under its rule. It bogles the mind to even think about the logistics of managing such a vast, dispersed empire.
Ruled from Earth, I presume. Ancient Earth, given all we've talked about lost technology and regression.
Spot on. And ruling over 1 million worlds means one thing. Bureaucracy. Oceans of it. They call it the Adeptus Terra. And just picturing the mountains of paperwork. It's enough to make anyone swear off galactic conquest.
No kidding. But there's got to be someone at the top of this pyramid.
Right.
Someone calling the shots.
Of course. The Emperor. A figure shrouded in mystery, an immortal being who guides humanity from the throne on ancient Terra. Or at least that's what they say.
An immortal being leading a technologically advanced empire. But our notes also mention primitive worlds, rampant superstition, and almost a religious fervor surrounding technology. How do those pieces fit together?
That's the paradox of the Imperium, isn't it? It's a place of stark contrasts. You might find a world with plasma weaponry orbiting a star system where people still farm with ox-drawn plows. It's a galaxy constantly wrestling with its past while struggling to grasp its future.
That tension is fascinating. But it also makes me wonder about the glue holding this whole thing together. If travel is so arduous and communication so limited, wouldn't it just crumble?
That's where things get really interesting. They have warp drives, yes. But it's not the smooth, reliable travel you see in science fiction. The warp is a parallel dimension, a realm of pure psychic energy as chaotic and dangerous as a raging storm.
Yikes. That doesn't sound like a pleasant commute. How do they even navigate that madness?
They rely on the Astronomicon, a psychic beacon emanating from Terra, like a lighthouse cutting through a raging psychic storm. But even that isn't enough. Only navigators humans born with a third eye that allows them to perceive the Astronomicon can guide ships through the warp.
So the survival of this million-world empire hinges on mutants and psychic powers. That's putting a lot of faith in the unpredictable.
It does raise some questions, doesn't it? Especially when you consider that psychers, those with psychic abilities, are often feared and ostracized within the Imperium, yet they're also vital to its very survival. It's a precarious balance, to say the least.
It's almost like they're constantly teetering on the edge of a knife, aren't they? One wrong step, and the whole thing could come crashing down. But hold on, you mentioned threats. Humanity isn't alone in this galaxy, is it?
Not by a long shot. While there are plenty of minor alien races, some pose existential threats to the Imperium. Take the Orcs, for example. Savage, warlike, and surprisingly adept with technology, often cobbled together from the wreckage of their enemies.
So we're talking about a galaxy-spanning way GH, like a never-ending green tide crashing against the walls of the Imperium.
A very apt analogy. And don't underestimate their crude weaponry. An Orc ship might look like a floating scrap heap, but it can pack a punch just as devastating as anything the Imperium can muster.
Okay, that's a little unnerving. What else? Our notes mentioned the Eldar.
Ah, the Eldar. An ancient and fading race, they reside on massive spacefaring vessels called craft worlds. They've mastered warp travel to a degree that makes the Imperium's technology look primitive. Imagine having a network of warp gates allowing for near instantaneous travel across the galaxy.
That's incredible. But they're fading, you said. Why would a race with such advanced technology be on the decline?
Their history is a long and tragic one filled with hubris and self-destruction. But that's a tale for another deep dive. For now, let's just say they're a shadow of their former glory, a reminder that even the most advanced civilizations can fall.
Okay, I'm definitely adding Eldar history to our list of future deep dives. But you mentioned another threat, something even more terrifying.
The Tyranids. Imagine a collective hive mind driven by an insatiable hunger, a hunger that has already consumed an entire galaxy. Now they've set their sights on the Milky Way, and the Imperium stands directly in their path.
Okay, officially terrified now. Galaxy-eating swarms, ancient space elves, and green hordes of never-ending war. The Imperium's got a full plate, that's for sure. But we've only talked about external threats so far. Our notes also mentioned internal struggles. What's going on within this sprawling empire?
Remember, the Imperium isn't just about conquest, it's about control. And maintaining control over 1 million worlds, each with its own unique culture, history, and challenges, is no easy feat. Even with the Adeptus Terra working overtime, cracks are bound to appear.
Right. And what about those tech priests on Mars? They seem to play a pretty crucial role in all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. They're the guardians of ancient technology, but their approach is less scientific, more, religious. Think of them less as engineers and more as a priesthood worshiping at the altar of long-lost knowledge.
So instead of pushing the boundaries of technology, they're more concerned with preserving what they already have.
Yeah.
Is that dies given everything we've learned about the threats facing the Imperium?
That's a question that haunts the Imperium. Are they clinging to the past while the future slips through their fingers? It's a debate that rages within the Imperium itself. Some see the tech priests as vital protectors of knowledge, while others see them as a roadblock to progress.
Okay, now we're really getting into the complexities of this empire. But hold on, we can't forget about the Psychers. Powerful, feared, essential. They seem to be a bit of a wild card in all this.
Indeed. The Imperium needs their power to navigate the warp and fend off psychic threats. But their abilities also make them potential conduits for chaos, the very force that nearly shattered the Imperium millennia ago. It's a constant tightrope walk trying to harness their power without succumbing to the darkness within.
This is incredible. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of the Imperium and I'm already hooked. But before we dive into the history and politics of it all, I'm dying to know more about the worlds within this vast empire. 1 million worlds.
Yeah.
It's got to be some serious diversity, right?
Oh, absolutely. From sprawling hive cities to feral worlds barely clinging to civilization, from planets dedicated to agriculture to those shrouded in perpetual war, the sheer variety of human experience within the Imperium is staggering. It's one of the things that's such a fascinating subject to explore.
All right, I'm ready for a grand tour. Show me the wonders and horrors of the Imperium. Let's start with something a little less terrifying than galaxy-eating swarms. What about those agri-worlds?
Ah, yes. Imagine entire planets dedicated to feeding the hungry maw of the Imperium. Vast, sprawling fields stretching as far as the eye can see, all working tirelessly to produce the food needed to sustain over 1 million worlds.
The logistics of that are mind-boggling. But it also paints a pretty bleak picture. Endless toil just to keep the machine running. What about the other end of the spectrum? Where do all those people live if entire planets are devoted to agriculture?
That would be the hive worlds. Picture colossal continents spanning cities, billions of souls packed into towering structures that pierce the sky. The sheer density of population, the constant struggle for resources, the grinding poverty and ever-present threat of crime. They represent both the ingenuity and the desperation of the Imperium.
Hive worlds, huh? I can already imagine the Adeptus Terra having a field day, or maybe a field century, trying to regulate and tax those places. Okay, so we've got planet-sized farms and mega cities. What else? What about those death worlds we hear so much about?
Ah, yes, the death worlds. Places where nature itself is a relentless adversary. Scorching deserts, toxic jungles, predator-infested landscapes where even breathing can be a challenge. It's a testament to human tenacity that we even attempt to colonize such places.
But why? Why would anyone willingly subject themselves to such hardship? What could possibly be worth the risk?
Sometimes it's about resources, rare minerals, strategic locations. The Imperium is always hungry for both. But other times it's about something more primal, a need to test the limits of human endurance to prove that we can conquer even the most hostile environments.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous kind of pride, but one that runs deep within the Imperium.
There's that paradox again. This strange mix of pragmatism and almost suicidal ambition. But what about those feral worlds? Our notes mention something about humans reverting to primitive ways. That's kind of depressing, isn't it?
It is a stark reminder that progress isn't a guaranteed upward trajectory. On feral worlds, you might find humans living in tribes hunting with spears, completely cut off from the Imperium's technology and culture. They serve as a cautionary tale, a whisper of what could happen if the Imperium's grip falters.
So within this vast empire, you've got everything from futuristic hive cities to Stone Age tribes. It's a microcosm of human history playing out across a million worlds. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. And then you have the Paradise Worlds, breathtakingly beautiful planets reserved for the elite of the Imperium, lush landscapes, pristine oceans, a glimpse of what the Imperium could be if it wasn't constantly teetering on the brink of collapse.
Paradise worlds, huh? It makes you wonder, is it a genuine attempt to preserve beauty and tranquility, or just another tool of control? A way to dangle a carrot in front of the masses while the gears of war grind on relentlessly?
That's an excellent question, and one that I'm sure has been debated by many within the Imperium. It speaks to that core tension we keep encountering. The ideal versus the reality, the dream of unity clashing with the brutal necessities of survival.
And speaking of unanswered questions, that blank new note from our source material keeps nagging at me. Any thoughts on what it could be? A missing piece of lore, a hidden message, a challenge for us to unravel.
Perhaps it's all of those things, or maybe it's something even more profound, a representation of the unknown, a reminder that even within a universe as meticulously crafted as Warhammer 40K, there are always mysteries to be discovered, stories waiting to be told.
I love that. It's like the universe itself is inviting us to participate, to add our own interpretations to this grand, sprawling narrative. But before we get too philosophical, let's take a step back and delve into the history of this fascinating, terrifying empire. Where did it all begin? How did humanity rise to such heights, only to find itself teetering on the edge of oblivion?
That's a story that stretches back millennia to a time before the Imperium, to an era of strife and darkness that shaped everything that came after. It all begins, of course, with the Emperor. It's a story of ambition, of both towering achievement and catastrophic failure. A story that begins with the Emperor's vision of a unified humanity stretching across the stars.
Okay, so we're finally going to peel back the layers of mystery surrounding this emperor figure. We know he's considered immortal, a guiding force for the Imperium. But who is he really? Where does he come from?
His origins are shrouded in myth and legend, lost to the depths of time. Some believe he's the most powerful psyker to have ever lived, a being of pure psychic energy. Others whisper of something even greater, a manifestation of humanity's collective will, a beacon of hope in a galaxy drowning in darkness.
Wow, that's giving me goosebumps. A being of pure psychic energy, a culmination of humanity's hopes and dreams. It's a powerful image. But even with such power, how did he manage to unite humanity? What was the galaxy like before the Imperium?
Picture a galaxy ravaged by war, a time known as the Age of Strife. Humanity had spread to the stars, but it was fractured, constantly at war with itself. Technology regressed, societies crumbled, and the very fabric of civilization seemed ready to unravel.
It's a stark reminder that progress isn't a given, even for a species as ambitious and resourceful as humanity. So how did the Emperor manage to bring order to this chaos? Was it through brute force, diplomacy, some kind of technological marvel?
He began with Terra, uniting ancient Earth under his rule. He saw the potential for humanity to achieve greatness, but he knew it could only be realized through unity. And so began the Great Crusade, a centuries-long campaign to bring the scattered worlds of humanity under the banner of the Imperium.
The Great Crusade. It sounds like something out of a legend. A single figure uniting a galaxy is an incredible feat. But how did he manage it? Surely even the Emperor couldn't conquer a galaxy single-handedly.
He had help. Genetically engineered sons, known as the Primarchs. Each one a masterpiece of genetic engineering created by the Emperor to be the ultimate warrior and leader. They were given command of legions of space marines, elite soldiers augmented to be the pinnacle of human strength and skill.
Hold on, genetically engineered super soldiers led by demigod sons. It's like something out of a mythological epic.
In a way it was. The Great Crusade was a time of incredible heroism and sacrifice, but it also marked the beginning of the Imperium's greatest tragedy, the Horus Heresy.
Okay, the name sounds ominous. Heresy. It implies betrayal, corruption. What happened?
The whispers of chaos, the dark gods that dwell within the warp, began to poison the hearts of some Primarchs, turning them against their father, against the very dream of a unified humanity.
So this Horus, he was one of the Emperor's sons, and he turned against him. Why?
Horus was the Emperor's favored son, his most trusted general. But the lure of chaos, the promise of power beyond measure, proved too tempting. He led a rebellion that shattered the Imperium, plunging it into a civil war that nearly extinguished the light of human civilization.
It's a classic tale of betrayal, isn't it? A reminder that even the most noble aspirations can be corrupted by ambition and the lust for power. But how did the Emperor, with all his power, allow this to happen?
The Emperor, for all his might, was not omniscient. He trusted his sons perhaps too much. And the warp is a treacherous realm, a place where even the strongest wills can be twisted and broken. The Horus heresy was a devastating blow, one from which the Imperium has never fully recovered.
So this heresy, it explains a lot about the Imperium we see today, doesn't it? The paranoia, the obsession with the fear of psychers, it all stems from this primal wound.
Precisely. The Horus heresy shattered the dream of a unified, enlightened humanity. The Emperor, mortally wounded in the final confrontation with Horus, was interred within the Golden Throne, a life support system that keeps him alive but barely functioning.
It's a tragic end for someone who dedicated his life to uniting humanity, to be betrayed by his own son, to be left a broken shell of his former self. It's heartbreaking.
And the Imperium he envisioned, the dream of a galaxy united under a benevolent ruler, became something different. A vast, sprawling empire riddled with corruption, teetering on the brink of collapse, forever haunted by the ghosts of its past.
This changes our entire perspective on the Imperium. It's not just a powerful, often brutal force. It's a wounded giant lashing out in fear and pain, desperately clinging to the fragments of a shattered dream. But how did this shift happen? How did the Imperium transform from a force of unity into this sprawling, paranoid entity we see today?
The Horus heresy created a vacuum of power, a void that was quickly filled by fear and suspicion. The Adeptus Terra, already a vast and complex bureaucracy, became even more entrenched, its grip tightening on every aspect of life within the Imperium.
So bureaucracy fueled by fear and paranoia became the order of the day. That explains the endless paperwork, the layers upon layers of administration. But what about the Emperor? Surely even in his weakened state, he still holds some sway.
He does, but his presence is more symbolic than active. He's become a figure of worship, a god emperor whose every word is interpreted as divine law. But the true power lies with those who control access to him, those who interpret his will and enforce his decrees.
That's a recipe for corruption, isn't it? Power concentrated in the hands of a few, with a figurehead too weak to challenge their authority. No wonder the Imperium is riddled with internal strife and power struggles.
It's a constant battle. Factions vying for influence, whispers of rebellion in the shadows. The Imperium is a pressure cooker, constantly on the verge of boiling over. And yet it endures.
It's that resilience, that stubborn refusal to give in that makes the Imperium so fascinating. It's a flawed, often terrifying entity, but there's something undeniably heroic about its struggle for survival against overwhelming odds.
But hold on, our notes mentioned something about the ecclesiarchy. How did they come into power? Were they always a part of the Imperium? They rose to prominence in the wake of the Horus heresy. With the Emperor mortally wounded, humanity needed something to believe in, a source of hope in a galaxy consumed by darkness. And the ecclesiarchy, with its fervent worship of the Emperor as a god, provided that hope, albeit one twisted by dogma and fear.
So they capitalized on the chaos, offering solace and meaning in exchange for obedience, for unquestioning faith. It's a potent combination, especially in a time of crisis.
Precisely. The ecclesiarchy became the voice of the emperor, its pronouncements shaping the very fabric of life within the Imperium. They preach unwavering faith, unquestioning loyalty, and absolute obedience to the emperor's will.
It sounds almost cult-like, a blend of religious fervor and political control. But how does this tie into the Imperium's relationship with technology? We've talked about the tech priests on Mars, their reverence for ancient knowledge. How does the ecclesiarchy view technology?
They view it with suspicion, seeing it as a potential source of corruption and heresy. Technology is tolerated, even embraced when it serves the needs of the Imperium, but any deviation from established doctrine is ruthlessly suppressed. Innovation is viewed as heresy, experimentation as a path to damnation.
It sounds incredibly stifling. No wonder the Imperium seems so technologically stagnant, so reliant on ancient, often unreliable technology. But wait, if innovation is heresy, How do they explain the Space Marines, the Primarchs, all those marvels of genetic engineering? Surely that goes against the grain of their beliefs.
That's where the lines get blurry. The Emperor in his time was a master of technology, a being who pushed the boundaries of science and genetics. His creations, even those as awe-inspiring as the Space Marines, are seen as relics of a bygone era, tools to be wielded in the Emperor's name, but never truly understood or replicated.
So the Emperor's legacy is a double-edged sword. He's revered as a god, but his greatest achievements are treated as sacred mysteries locked away by dogma and fear. It's almost tragic in a way.
It is a reflection of the Imperium's fundamental struggle, the tension between clinging to the past and reaching for the future, between embracing the Emperor's legacy and fearing the consequences of his power.
This deep dive is revealing layers upon layers of complexity within the Imperium. It's a fascinating, if often unsettling portrait of a civilization grappling with its past, its present, and its uncertain future. But I have to ask, with all these challenges, internal and external, can the Imperium really survive? Is there any hope for this wounded giant?
That's the question that hangs over everything in Warhammer 40k. The Imperium is in a constant state of war, beset by enemies on all sides, its very foundations riddled with cracks, and yet it endures.
There's that resilience again. But is it enough? Can sheer willpower overcome the overwhelming odds stacked against them? I'm eager to explore those questions further, but I think it's time we shifted gears a bit. We've talked about the Emperor, the Horus Heresy, the rise of the ecclesiarchy, and the Imperium's internal struggles. But what about the individual lives within this vast empire? What does it actually mean to be a citizen of the Imperium?
That's a question that takes us beyond the grand sweep of history and into the hearts and minds of the billions who live and die under the Emperor's banner. It's a journey into the daily realities of life in the 41st millennium, where faith and fear are constant companions and survival is a victory hard one.
It's mind-blowing to think about the sheer scale of it all. Billions of lives spread across 1 million worlds, all existing under the shadow of the Imperium. Well, what does that actually look like? Is it all endless war and religious fanaticism, or is there more to the story?
It's easy to get lost in the grand narratives, the epic battles, and galaxy-spanning conflicts. But the true heart of the Imperium lies in the individual stories, the countless lives shaped by this vast and often unforgiving empire.
All right, I'm ready for a change of perspective. Let's zoom in a bit. What's it actually like to be a citizen of the Imperium?
Life in the 41st millennium is harsh, often brutal. For the average citizen, existence is a constant struggle against poverty, hunger, and the ever-present threat of war. Faith in the Emperor is often the only solace, the only shield against the darkness that surrounds them.
It's a bleak picture, but I guess it makes sense. We've talked about the Imperium's flaws. Its corruption, its tendency towards authoritarianism. It can't be all sunshine and roses for the people living under its rule. But is there any room for individuality, for personal ambition within such a rigid system?
There are always those who strive for something more, who seek to carve out their own destinies within the confines of the Imperium. Merchants seeking fortune on the fringes of the galaxy, artisans crafting beauty amidst the grime of hive cities, scholars poring over forbidden texts in search of lost knowledge. The human spirit finds ways to persevere even in the darkest of times.
That's a bit reassuring, at least. It's easy to get caught up in the grim dark, the endless war, and the oppressive atmosphere. But knowing that there are still sparks of hope, glimmers of individual ambition, it adds another layer to this already complex tapestry. But let's get back to the average citizen for a moment. You mentioned faith as a source of comfort. What role does the ecclesiarchy play in their lives?
The ecclesiarchy is a pervasive force within the Imperium. Their priests are present at every level of society, from the humblest village to the highest echelons of power. They offer solace in times of hardship, guidance in matters of faith, and a sense of purpose in a galaxy often devoid of meaning.
But we also know they're a tool of control, enforcing the Emperor's will, stamping out heresy wherever it arises. Is there a line between faith and fear? Is it possible to believe without being afraid?
That's a question that plagues many within the Imperium. For some, faith is a genuine source of comfort, a way to make sense of the chaos and brutality that surrounds them. But for others, it's a tool of manipulation, a weapon wielded by those in power to maintain control. It's a complex, dynamic one that reflects the inherent contradictions within the Imperium itself.
It's that constant push and pull between hope and despair, between faith and fear, that makes the Imperium so captivating. It's a flawed, often terrifying entity, but it's also a reflection of humanity itself, with all its contradictions and complexities.
And that's why, despite its grim reputation, Warhammer 40k continues to resonate with so many people. It's a universe that doesn't shy away from the darkness, But it also acknowledges the resilience of the human spirit, the enduring capacity for hope, even in the face of overwhelming odds.
It's like looking into a warped mirror, seeing a distorted reflection of ourselves, both our potential for greatness and our capacity for self-destruction. But all this talk about the individual experience within the Imperium has me thinking about that blank new note again. We've explored the vastness of the galaxy, the intricacies of the Imperium, the threats it faces, and the lives of those who call it home. Could this note represent us?
That's a fascinating thought. Perhaps it's an invitation for us, the viewers, to step into this universe, to imagine ourselves as citizens of the Imperium.
To consider our own place in this grand, chaotic narrative, what roles would we play? Loyal servants of the Emperor? Heretics questioning the dogma? Fearful citizens struggling to survive? Or something else entirely?
It's a question with endless possibilities, and that's the beauty of Warhammer 40K. It's a universe that invites us to explore, to imagine, to create our own stories within its vast and intricate framework.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey. We've delved into the heart of the Imperium, explored its history, its contradictions, and its enduring appeal. It's a universe that stays with you long after you've finished exploring its depths. And listener, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What surprised you most about the Imperium? What resonated with you? And what role would you choose in this vast and unforgiving galaxy? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.